All right, we're back for another episode of Generative Genius, AI and Consumer Brand Marketing. Super excited to welcome in our guest today, Amelia, who has long been a friend along the way that we've been building things and growing them in the video marketplace that we're building out at Scipio. But beyond that, has a ton of experience in the consumer brand marketing space. So Amelia, for our audience, would love to get a quick introduction from you.
Yeah, hi. Thanks so much for having me on. I mean, I'm obviously friends, long time, almost colleagues, so to speak, and just huge fans of what you guys are doing. I mean, my background is primarily in the CPG and the DDC space, really leading new customer acquisition teams on the performance marketing and direct response side. So, I've spent anywhere from $50 to $100 million on the Facebook and thing like that. I'm obsessed with ad creative. I'm obsessed with video ad creative, and the power that it has when you utilize it and you build systems, sometimes using AI to really, pull that lever in terms of improving efficiency. So yeah, just really excited to chat.
Love it. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. I know you have a ton and a wealth of experience in the, as a performance marketer in the D2C space, which we'll get to talk about and jump into on a new adventure now too, which I definitely want to talk about with you in what you're doing with our friends at Podscribe. So we'll get into all of that. But the whole point here is that, for too long as generative AI or just as AI has come into play, it's been this buzzword and it's been talked about, and people like to talk around it, but not really about it and what they're actually doing with it. And so that's what I'm excited to have time with you today to chat through, is to really dive in a lot deeper and understand what are some of the true ways as a consumer brand marketer that you're thinking about AI and really leveraging it. And then now as we move past just the idea of machine learning and AI, but into like truly generative AI, what does that mean, right? We were on the cusp of this revolution almost. And so just to start things off and kind of hear from you too, like in what ways do you think AI can be a game changer? I know you've worked with small brands in the past too, but for small businesses trying to compete with these large industry giants, I want to start there. Like, how does AI change the game when it comes to that?
I mean, so many ways. And it's funny now, I don't know, I forget when ChatGPT was released, right? But like now everybody knows about it. But, people have been using AI tools for a long time. I remember the first tool that I used that didn't really have anything to do with like the ad creative or the video side or images was Copy AI. And so they had launched a tool. I think they got like an early beta when it came to ChatGPT and OpenAI that would help you with marketing copy. So you would provide it a couple keywords, give it a description, and then would spit out, different headlines, tags, things like that. And so I was using that tool, years ago. And I mean, from a bandwidth perspective, again, working at small teams and things like that, even just like that start-stop problem that you have if you're not an experienced copywriter, which I am far from, was just absolutely life-changing. And even those first couple minutes of using that tool, I was like, holy crap, like this is not going anywhere. This is absolutely, game changing. And I remember even again before DALL-E, which was ChatGPT's version of, what Midjourney really does and excels in now. There were a couple like open source libraries on Google Labs that I would play around with, and you would, type in like a whale with unicorn. It would take 15 minutes and it would generate an image and things like that. So that was just absolutely crazy. So I think there's so many ways. I mean, now ChatGPT is so good at what it does, no matter, what people say. I use it every single day, all day. I was using it when I was at these various, at least Pet Plate most recently. Again, copy, articles, blogs, headlines, even like teaching yourself about stuff. I mean, the number of times I've used it for like, all right, I'm running into this Google Analytics error when I'm trying to set up this conversion event. Like, what does this mean? How can I go and use Zapier to do this and that? So, I mean, it is just, God, from a marketing standpoint, and I think this is really like the first iteration of how revolutionary AI in general will be, but just, turning myself into three people almost is incredible.
Yeah, right. Anytime you can 3X something, I think people typically get pretty excited about that. The other thing that I find interesting and just in talking to so many folks around leveraging AI, copy is always like one of the first things that we talk about. But what's so interesting to me is that we're now really moving past copy and starting to get into the ways that AI can truly transform like a video marketing strategy that we're developing. Are you playing in that space at all?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, we could talk about your guys' tools and stuff, and that's the actually like taking the video and doing things with it with AI. But even briefing influencer scripts or having it help you generate like hooks and different ideas or how you might think about problem solution statements for this sort of audience. I mean, all of that just like content creation, it's like having somebody there that has endless bandwidth to like brainstorm with. And so I'll have conversations with it, and hey, I'm thinking about this thing, I'm running into this problem. Here's my concerns with this sort of approach. Give me some ideas, give me some examples. So not even just copy, really just again having somebody almost there in front of me that I can just start to brainstorm and talk with. So whether it's Podscribe or companies I've been in the past, we use it 100% from the video standpoint. I mean, again, even we talk about breaking things out into modules, problems, hooks, things like that. What are the types of orders we could flow these in? So really it is, we use it all the time, and I've used it, for so many different things.
So I love, hearing all of the different use cases that exist there. One of the things, and you talk about, we almost like start to head towards a metric, but you talk about like 3Xing yourself, right? The ability to do 3 times that. But when it comes to like the true metrics, I feel like that's still a kind of an unproven ground that we're trying to figure out, right? For you, and as you've implemented, you said for years, like different ways that AI, are there specific metrics that you've been able to include or at least think through in the way that AI helps you deliver against goals at the end of the day? And like, how do you validate that it's providing the value, the 3X value that you mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is just speed to finishing something. I mean, again, I'll go back to the copy thing because I am just the world's worst copywriter, like grammar, spelling, you name it, everything. It just takes me 100 times longer than it would any other person. And so even just from, all right, let's say I have to write an article or I have to write an influencer brief, here's sort of the talking points, here's the story we're trying to tell, things like that, absolutely 10X that speed. I could get an influencer brief out what would have maybe taken me 30 minutes, from start to finish, let's say 12, 7, whatever it is, in terms of the time. So I think the time, and you really do see that. It would be funny now, you make me think of maybe I'll set a timer next time, try to do it on my own and then see what I could do with ChatGPT or something. But I think the speed is, again, maybe not quantified all the time, but it's so tangible. You can see it. And I think, there's like the human component of it too, right? I go back to it's like having another person. I could grab my colleagues, I could grab the people that report to me. We could sit in a room and we could brainstorm, and they're only going to listen to me and listen to my ranting and my thoughts and stuff for so long before we just, we tune out and we get, lost in whatever, and sidebars start to come up, and having something, especially now with like ChatGPT being able to talk to it. I'll just sit in my living room and I'll have conversations with it. Hey, I'm, just here's what I'm thinking about this webinar or this, ad performance or ad creative, and, just going back and forth. So it's just, again, an inexhaustible like resource that, again, is you can now, some things about ChatGPT, you can even train it to be certain, good at a certain thing. So end rant there, but yeah, so many different things, and the time is huge.
You say end rant, but I think that the interesting thing there is when you talk about training it, right? What we're really talking about is this now personalized almost agent that's able to help you think through things long-term versus just a short-term question, right? Where is something geographically, or how many of these are in a yard, or whatever those kind of things are in the way that we think about it. But I'm curious. So have you used it in this like more personalized way? Have you seen it get better as you've trained it over time and like brought some of that personalization into future recommendations that maybe it wasn't even correlated to the specific question?
Absolutely. I mean, I have, and again, we say train, right? Like I'm not actually like, like programming it necessarily, but I'm feeding it information I want it to know, things I want it to store. I mean, I'll even take transcripts from conversations. I'll have a meeting with our marketing team, when I was at Pet Plate, and we'll talk about, again, a number of different hooks, and I'll feed it that transcript so that it can have context. So, I mean, everything, even then from ad creative to, modularization techniques to, I'll train a a Google Sheet specific one for all of our KPIs and how it needs to think about it so that it can reiterate something that, a C-suite is going to be able to take in and actually grab insights from, that maybe the marketing team in particular doesn't need to go as in depth for. So absolutely. I mean, I think you could basically look at every chain of things that you're doing and train some version of it just by feeding it context and information that it can save and use in its knowledge base to be able to be really good at that task. And again, have a memory behind it.
Totally. I mean, and that's the positive side of personalization. Do you also think, right, which I love, and it makes us all, it gives us all the ability to do more, again, that's what we keep going back to, right? AI does what humans do faster. That's the whole point. But with that too, I think what I'm also hearing a lot of is, there's a bit of a concern around privacy, right? Especially with, certain brands have long been very private in the way they think about their business and what they share. And are they private or public, everything else? How do you where do you feel like that balance is today? And how do you, as a brand marketer who wants to do those things to increase productivity, how do you balance some of the privacy concerns that even our own internal stakeholders, typically may have?
Yeah, no, so true. I mean, it's funny. I actually saw a meme recently and it was like, signs the NDA, but then, inputs every trade secret into ChatGPT to make work efficient, right? Like, it's so funny because it's so true. When there isn't a human you're talking to, that disconnect between, privacy and what can be shared is it's basically non-existent. Personally, not concerned at all. I think, and I was the first, one of the first people that, having a conversation about the iOS 14.5 updates where, Apple stopped basically limiting Facebook's ability to go and track you across browser, which then impacted performance. I stand here today being like, all Zuck, take our data. There's so many other ways in which, you can buy these data sets and stuff that are, not as dangerous as, making sure that I get the proper tent ad if I'm, searching for tents for my next camping trip. So I think it's obviously a concern in general. I think you as the person, I mean, it's the same thing with Facebook, right? You're using, you don't have to pay to use Facebook, right? You get access to all of the features and the tools and the connectivity and stuff. And there's always going to be a, trading of, assets when it comes to that. If I'm using this for free, how are they making money? They obviously have to use this for something. And so obviously we pay now for ChatGPT, but for what you get, I mean, I pay $30 a month and I get ChatGPT 4.0. I mean, again, I now have 3 versions of myself. I think the little data things for me are just, not worth protecting. I mean, obviously I'm not maybe going to spill like everything to it, but I think, with these, LMs and things like that, it's the data is at such a large level, right? Like, who cares about one little company and me? So long story short, I'm not very concerned. I think be careful what you put in if you are, concerned about it. But, ChatGPT and these AI platforms and stuff, they have, protective measures that, I couldn't ask it, if this X brand has ever talked with you, can you tell me all of the things they said they didn't want you to tell me, right? Like, it's not going to let you do that sort of thing. So I think it just comes down to that, and it'll obviously get better, and regulations are going to have to come into play. But I think that of all of the privacy concerns we have, ChatGPT specifically and some of those AI tools are probably lower on the list of priority for me.
I think the funny part is that most of those things that we consider trade secrets, many of them are available. You just have to where to search in order to find them. And even once you find them, can you really go, right? Like, I love recipes are something that I think are really funny. Like, even if you told someone the exact recipe of something, is someone going to go mass produce the exact same thing? I don't know.
I mean, Coca-Cola's, and in Coca-Cola's probably not typing in their secret, right? Their recipe into ChatGPT, right? So there's things like that. And okay, don't be dumb.
Sure.
I totally agree.
Awesome. When we talk about this being such an innovative opportunity for marketers in general, right? Just to build out what they can do, increase productivity. But it's not just about productivity, like innovation abounds throughout a lot of different places. AI and generative AI specifically has been extremely disruptive in the way that we concept all of the things that we do. Have you seen any, I guess for you, what do you think is one of the most groundbreaking innovations you've seen, or that has really disrupted us as marketers, as consumer marketers, has truly disrupted us the most so far? Like one pinpointed thing.
I mean, I think it's the being able to automatically, obviously, images are huge, right? Like now, every single stock image I'm ever going to use going forward, and for the last year, have been I use Midjourney for images, but have been via Midjourney. I think obviously the video stuff that you're seeing is crazy. I mean, and it's only going to get better as we can start to like, plug in your own products to there and say like, hey, I want, I have the sunscreen bottle and I want splashing water on the side. Like it's only getting better. I saw an example. There's this app called Seed Scout, and they're basically help you identify all the restaurants nearby that don't have seed oils in their food. And I don't know, I'm kind of a health junkie, so like that's really been
Sure.
really interesting to me. And I saw probably the best example of not only a mix of video AI but song AI that they also probably scripted via ChatGPT. And I forget what their thing is called, but I saw it on Instagram, and it was this whole funny song about what food used to be and what it is now, and then all of the video for this now theme song that they have was via AI. And I think again, we're still far out from that, but it was probably the best example, and specifically quantifiably great because it went viral, and I'm seeing it everywhere, of using all three of those types of things. They scripted it with ChatGPT. They trained a voice thing to create the song and the the sound and whatnot, and then they had all of the video footage and stuff be generated through these video tools. So that was probably the biggest example I've seen that like absolutely caught my attention.
Very cool. I love that. From a tool perspective, you talked about a couple so far, but just from an AI tool and what's available today for marketers, like what do you think folks should really be paying attention to?
The Luma's obviously the big video one. There's I forget the other one. There's a couple other ones that are out there. I think I see a lot of people using ChatGPT for images. I use Midjourney. It's the actual way in which you generate it. It used to be you would create it through Discord, and it was kind of weird. And now they actually have a portal and stuff. But the being able to like customize, fine tune, and tweak the images that you're creating, and adding styles and image weights to them and stuff is really cool. So I would say those are some of the tools. I mean, we haven't even gotten into the ad creative side of things, and I could talk,
Sure.
to you about CPO all day long, but I think that's sort of it's a different take on the video, the productivity, the innovation and whatnot, that still needs to be considered, because it's not just replace all video and footage with AI, but how can we leverage that AI, to turn one ad into five, and help, sort of increase the density and the scalability of what you're doing from a paid perspective.
Well, since you bring up ad creative, no, just jumping into that. I think what's interesting is you talked about creative so far. We've talked a lot about synthesized creative, right?
Yep.
And I think that's where everybody's mind goes when you think generative AI and you think content, whether it's video, images. You think about cats eating pizza on the moon and stuff
Yep.
like that like people automatically go to. There's a fun entertainment value in that, right? But I think that what is really important is on the ad creative side, and what you talk about is brands have the ability now to be more effective with the content that they have already in just a much faster way. Right. Yep. And so you jump in. I mean, I'd love to just hear kind of your take on that and the ability to do that in a very real ad creative world that doesn't feel so far off. Like sometimes the generative AI stuff feels so far off for a brand, and it's like, it's neat, but like, how do I really use it? And I feel like what you're talking about with ad creative and taking content you already have and being able to play with it, like that actually feels like a very near-term thing that could make a pretty big difference.
No, absolutely. And I mean, I'll even tell sort of our story and what my, sort of background in doing this stuff manually and now having an AI driven tool that can do this for me is, because that's really interesting. But you're totally right. Like, I mean, if I was at any of the brands that I have worked with in the past like 6-7 years, zero chance they would let me run a full like synthesized AI video, right? Like it's just, maybe we'll get there at one point. Maybe you can use it for some B-roll stuff, but like zero chance we're ever going to replace influencers, at least right now. There's a lot of companies trying to do it with, full AI. So I think the other side of it is like you said, being able to utilize it, and it's not productivity, it's not efficiency, but turning, again, my thesis about ad creative and performance and paid media and stuff is really how can you get the most out of what you already have. And so I did a whole talk, Stephen, long ago about this system that we built at PetPlate, where it allowed us to do exactly that, turn one ad into five, because scaling video ad creative, despite the fact that it has the biggest impact on, improving efficiency, scaling performance and stuff, having 100 influencers, having all of them do influencer videos and then running that on Facebook. It's impossible. It really nearly is, not to mention all of the issues that come around with, now we've got so many versions of ads. How do we know which one is going to perform and why? And so what we would do at PetPlate manually was take all of our influencer videos, and we would have our video editor literally slice them up. So we would have them identify what the hooks were. We would have them identify what the problem statements were, the testimonials. And so we developed this really large repository of what we call sort of modules of all of these different components that, make up a typical UGC video or video ad creative. And it obviously worked. It allowed us to scale. But then discovering you guys and having, not to, again, sort of drop the mic here, but, the tool that you guys have created not only probably would have put me out of a job, from that sort of system standpoint, but would have absolutely changed the game when it came to our ability to really scale that video ad creative. And so that's the part of AI ad creative and video development that's really, really exciting, because it takes so much manual work to sift through 1,000 videos that every brand probably has in their repository, and know what's going to perform, and why or why not. And so the ability to use AI to, again, sort of turn that one ad into 5, slice and dice those modules automatically. You now, sit within 15 minutes, sit on a repository of what could be an exponential or factorial number of ads that you could run. And again, further isolate those variables, A/B test, and get to a better point of truth.
So that I want to actually touch a little bit more on the last part. Using the services or using the tools, cool. Like, love it, right? That's awesome. Obviously, I do love it. But with that, all of this it has to be a results game, right? Like using a tool to use it for a tool's sake or for fun or whatever, right? Is like, because it's interesting is one thing. But I'd love for you to dive a little bit deeper, like with the mentality that you talk about, the methodology that was implemented. I mean, like, what were you guys able to do at PetPlate? You got to use your content in a greater capacity. I love that. But like, how did you measure the effectiveness there, right? Use AI as the tool that then gives you the results. That's the part that I love about the story the most.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, so you've got two different influencers you work with, right? Maybe they both have the same dog, or maybe they even have the same problem. They knew that their dog wasn't healthy because he was eating kibble, and they wanted to switch to, human grade dog food, right? Like, just as an example, let's say I run those two ad creatives. They might have the same dog. They might be the same age. They might be even the same geo. There's going to be 1,000 other factors that is going to make them different, and it could be the reason why some person converts on that ad versus they don't. And so when you're looking at these two and you're running them and one performs or one doesn't, there's no way to know what's the reason. Maybe it's because she has blonde hair, or she said this, inflection point a little higher and sounded more exciting, right? Like, you're really just like throwing spaghetti at the wall. And so with a tool like you guys and what, we did with, manually at PetPlate, is we were able to actually isolate those variables so we could test ads against each other. So we'd take, rather than running these two different creatives with two different influencers, side by side, we'd make the ad creative the same, but we would switch one component. So we would have the same ad with two different hooks, or we'd have the same ad with two different problem statements. And so now we're isolating these variables. There's only one piece of the ad that's different. And then we have an answer for why one performs or one doesn't, right? Maybe the way this person talked about how, they could microwave the dog food so that they didn't have to remember 7 hours before they, fed their dog to take it out of the freezer. Maybe that was the linchpin for getting people to convert. We would have never known that. It's such a subtle difference if you were manually looking at both of those ad creatives. But when you are able to actually, again, slice and dice them, turn them into their modules, you can test them against each other. And that's a really difficult thing when you're doing it manually, right? It takes a lot of time. We had a full-time video editor that probably 30% of his job was just isolating those modules, saving them, storing them, naming them. And then our team would test them against each other. So, again, we were using those as sort of the thing that led to the results by the ability to isolate all of the different unique aspects of each, and better understand why or why not something worked.
Well, I think the other thing that's interesting in what you mentioned too, right? In your idea of modularizing the ad creative, long we have thought, I'm so excited to work with influencer or creator XYZ because they give me an ad, right? And I think what you're talking about, and as a brand, by the way, when I hear influencer or I hear paid, any sort of like paid spend that sits behind influencer or UGC style content, I often think, great, like boost it, whitelist it. That's the way that ultimately I'm going to be able to deliver value. But just to be clear, like you're talking about something completely different, right? You're almost talking about taking back the control of that content and then being able to leverage it across a paid strategy that is not specific to having to rely on the influencer to drive engagement or anything like that. Can you explain that a little bit further too?
Absolutely. And that was a huge thing. So when I came on, we were working with 50 plus influencers, and it was the exact same thing, right? We would give them some idea of what we wanted them to say. They would film a video, do whatever style they wanted, and then they'd post it on their stories, and maybe we would ask them permission to run it on paid. That's so hard. Again, we go back to, there's so many different variables around why something might perform or why something might not. I mean, not to mention the bandwidth it takes to just manage these influencers. I mean, you're talking about 50, right? Like you're having conversations, you're getting feedback, you're providing feedback, things like that. And so what we did was we actually cut the number of influencers we worked with from like 50 to 5, and it might even have been like 3 at the end of the day. And what we cared about was way less about their following, their audience. It was about who they were and how well they could tell a story, and specifically like an unscripted story. So we would work with them, and our sort of main ask would be, we want video footage from you telling an authentic story, telling an authentic testimonial, talking about the problem and the solution, and we want the ability and the control to do with those clips whatever we wanted. I mean, obviously within brand safe requirements, right? We're not just going to like blast their name in some inappropriate thing. But we wanted the control to be able to take that footage, and again, mash it up with other influencers, we call it a UGC mashup, where there's a bunch of different people telling a story. Maybe we just, clip the video they sent us into 30 seconds and we'd run that. But we saw the value when it came to, again, building this system, and not their following, not necessarily who they were, but in the content that they could provide us. And we wanted the control over being able to curate that content, edit it, text overlay, captions, transitions, to the way that we knew ads would perform best. Because it doesn't matter how, TikTok famous somebody is, even if they're a really good editor, we know what works. I mean, I knew could answer what caption works best and what background color works best, every single time, what, 3 seconds of the intro or the hook, needed to be in there for it to perform. And so it doesn't matter how much they know, we know because we're running the ad what performs. And so we wanted the ability to have that control, and again, run it with whatever best practices we had.
Totally. And you talk about the tools that allowed you to essentially, what's available today versus what you guys are doing manually, like a tool set that could help you do it. But can you also talk about, like, once the ad units are created, what happens then? How do you look at optimizing those amongst your spend? How do you allocate dollars that sit behind it? Like, what is your thought on then, like, truly making the most, right? The assets are just one piece. Now I got to go make the assets work for me.
Yeah. I mean, have a good media buying team. I think that's it used to be way more critical. Now Facebook's pretty good at, tell us the conversion event, don't even give us an idea of targeting, just make sure our pixels are installed, and then we're going to be able to do a better job at it than you. So it's still really important to have a good media buying team, look at those things every day. But yeah, I mean, we had a very specific campaign structure, 2 different larger campaigns that were all optimized for conversions. One of them was more of the higher intent audiences, so it'd be our direct lookalikes. The other one was more broad targeting. And so every time we were testing a new ad, so let's say we were working with, we were doing a UGC mockup and we wanted to test these 2 specific hooks. So everything in both of those videos was the same except for that 3 seconds. Anytime we were testing a new creative concept, we would put that in a new broad ad set. So we're just letting Facebook do its thing, optimized, and reach the people it knows it should reach best. And then we'd, monitor performance, see which one had the highest, view through rate, see which one had the highest 3-second view rate, look at the click through rate. And within a week or 2, I would say within a couple days, you probably can guess which one's going to be the bigger performer. Sometimes we'd give it a little bit more time, but we would kill the one that didn't perform. We would move the high performer into another, our sort of like core higher intent audience campaign. And then, now we know this hook performs really well, and we would go and take that hook and put it on other ads. So now let's take our highest performing that was already in the high intent campaign that was killing it. Let's see if we can make it improve even more if we add this new hook, or let's see if we can get, more longevity out of it. Maybe we can run it for another couple weeks or a month by sort of refreshing it and dealing with that ad fatigue. So good media buying, having a great campaign structure, and then having somebody in there that's looking at it, optimizing, getting ready to turn things on, turn things off when they get those statistically significant data points as to whether something's going to perform or not are critical.
Gotcha. Very cool. I know you're on a new adventure now and implementing a lot of things we've talked about today in a little bit different way. You want to talk a little bit about where you're at and how you guys are helping both brands and podcasters alike?
Yeah. I mean, I've moved on to the dark side. I now went from the CPG and the D2C space, or B2C, to now the B2B space. So I lead marketing for it's really a podcast attribution company. So any brands running podcast ads, we're able to actually pixel those podcast ads, and then we can measure performance just like you would see for CTV or Facebook or Google. So we'll give you the visitor rates and the real-time data in terms of conversions. So it's been great. I mean, we work with the BetterHelps, the Athletic Greens, True Classic, you name it, CPG D2C brand that's spending on podcasts, trying to diversify their media mix. And, they pixel other podcasts with us so that they can get those real-time insights. So yeah, it's been really, really exciting. I think we do a little less on the video ad creative standpoint. We're not spending as much on Facebook, things like that. But even there's a lot of learnings from the video and the ad side, UGC style things that I've taken to this business. On my LinkedIn, I post what I call UGC style videos all the time. And they're just me looking at a camera, ranting, adding some transitions and text overlays. Obviously LinkedIn doesn't have like a, huge UGC influencer presence. And so those posts perform really, really well because it's a unique style that is sort of goes against the grain of the typical media and content you would see on a platform like that. But it follows the same principles that, when you're in Facebook and you're trying to separate the noise, you're trying to get people's attention, especially in what is now, such an attention deficit economy. And you apply those same learnings and those same foundational just strategies to a new medium, whether it's, TikTok, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever it is, they can really perform. So we definitely use a lot of the same concepts I've used before. We're just going after a different audience.
Totally. Quick hit. Coolest utilization of AI or generative AI since you've been in your new role?
Our CEO is a brilliant ad tech developer, long background in that. And some of the more technical attribution and pixel related things were just, despite me having a computer science degree, were just kind of over my head. And so I, have to reach out to him and ask questions about, how is this methodology different, whatever. I trained a model of ChatGPT and I call it Pete. And it's a lot of the transcripts and conversations we've had, a lot of the answers I've asked or questions I've asked and gotten answers for. And so I usually, before I ask him a question, I'll go to that and then sort of, position, hey, am I right thinking this is how it works or whatnot? And it's pretty accurate about 85% of the time. It's like, oh, yep, right there. So that's probably the most recent thing that's, again, even been a huge game changer.
Think about all the time saved, right? The question is just a little bit different or this one scenario, but when you apply so much learning, right? I find that actually fascinating because we sit here and we ask our superiors and our colleagues and the folks that work for it, everybody's asking questions all the time, right? And we've gotten into this like, I don't know, I'll just ask real quick. Like, what a unique way to actually have that answer by training somebody that has all of the answers already. And then at an 85% efficiency rating, like pretty high on the list.
No,
very
totally.
Cool.
Totally. I mean, in even like a lot of, answers and things have probably already, or questions have already been asked, right? But like me searching through Slack, searching for the word IP to try to find that one question that I had asked, now I can just ask it, hey, remind me what I had told you before, right? Now, so it's almost like an extension of your brain too. It can save knowledge and remember knowledge a lot better. And so, maybe part of that's kind of scary, but I don't have to remember as many things. Now I have something that, sort of a repository of what I've already learned that I can, quickly access rather than sitting there, searching or trying to ponder what that answer was.
Totally. Love it. Well, Amelia, this has been super fun. Thank you so much for joining me on another edition of Generative Genius AI and Consumer Brand Marketing. It's been super having you here, and really your insights have been very, very helpful. I think very thought out. And also, I love the very specific use cases that you've provided as to how to truly leverage generative AI as a marketer. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you also for all of your efforts. I know that there's a lot that have gone into just the way that you think about ads and how things come together and ad creative and just trying to make the most out of the pieces of content that you have. It's been a blessing for us at Scipio, and also really appreciate all of those efforts in helping us continue to build what we're building today. So really appreciate your time again.
Thank you. This was awesome. I love any opportunity to nerd out about this stuff. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Cool. All right. Talk again soon. Cheers.